Two brothers, same house growing up, same parents, same schools, same opportunities, similar careers, nearly identical salaries their entire working lives. At 65, one brother retired with $1.4 million in investments, a paid-off house, and complete financial freedom. He spends winters in Arizona, helps his grandchildren with college costs, and never checks prices at restaurants. The other brother retired with $180,000 in savings, a mortgage with 12 years remaining, and constant financial anxiety. He works part-time at a hardware store because Social Security doesn't cover his expenses. He lies awake at night calculating whether he can afford both his medications and his property taxes. Identical genes, identical upbringing, identical earning power. Radically different outcomes. And the divergence didn't happen when they were young. It didn't happen gradually over decades. It happened almost entirely in one decade.
The divergence didn't happen in their 20s, when both brothers were too young and too broke to make meaningful financial progress. It didn't happen in their 30s, when both were building families and careers with similar approaches. And it didn't happen in their 50s, when the trajectory was already locked in. The divergence happened entirely in their 40s. One brother made a series of decisions during that decade that seemed small at the time. The other made different decisions that also seemed small. Neither realized they were determining the entire shape of their remaining lives. Your 40s represent the most consequential financial decade you will ever experience. Not because the decisions are harder than other decades, but because the stakes multiply in ways that aren't obvious until it's too late to change course.
My name is Jude, and I spend a lot of time studying the specific decisions that separate comfortable retirements from stressed ones. Today, I'm going to show you exactly why your 40s carry this outsized importance, the specific choices that determine the outcome, and what you can do right now, regardless of your current age, to end up on the right side of this divide. Subscribe and hit the like button if this ends up being useful. Let's get into it.
Your 40s sit at the intersection of three financial forces that don't align at any other point in your life. Understanding these forces explains why this decade determines everything that follows. The first force is peak earning power. For most professionals, income reaches its maximum somewhere between 42 and 55. The absolute dollars are higher than they've ever been, and higher than they'll likely be again. This means your 40s represent the years when you have the most raw material available for building wealth. The second force is remaining compounding time. At 40, you still have 20 to 25 years until traditional retirement. That's enough time for money to roughly quadruple at historical market returns. A dollar invested at 40 becomes approximately $4 by 65. At 50, a dollar becomes roughly $2.50. At 55, roughly $2. The compounding multiplier drops rapidly with each passing year. The third force is expense stabilization. By your 40s, many major expenses have peaked or begun declining. Children become more independent. The house fits comfortably in your budget. The career wardrobe is established. The furniture is bought. This creates potential margin that didn't exist in your 30s, when every expense category was growing simultaneously.
The compounding math is unforgiving in a way that most people don't fully grasp until they're on the wrong side of it. Let me make it concrete. A dollar invested at age 40 becomes approximately $4 by retirement at 65, assuming historical 8% average returns. The same dollar invested at age 50 becomes roughly $2.50. At 55, it becomes roughly $2. At 60, barely $1.50. This means the money you invest at 42 works dramatically harder than the money you invest at 52. Not slightly harder, dramatically harder. The mathematical leverage of time cannot be recovered through increased contributions later. There is no catch-up contribution large enough to compensate for a decade of missed compounding at this stage of life. This is why the brother who made different decisions in his 40s couldn't fix the problem in his 50s, even when he finally tried.
Let me show you the specific numbers. Consider someone who reaches 40 with $100,000 in retirement savings, earning $110,000 annually. Scenario 1, they save 15% consistently from age 40 to 65. Result, approximately $1.35 million at retirement. Scenario 2, they save only 5% in their 40s, then panic and increase to 15% from age 50. Same total years of working, just a different distribution. Result, approximately $780,000. That's $570,000 less despite only 10 years of reduced contributions. Scenario 3, lifestyle inflation takes over in their 40s. Contributions drop to 2%. At 50, reality hits, and they save aggressively at 20% all the way to retirement. Despite this heroic catch-up effort, they accumulate approximately $590,000. Their comfortable 40s cost them $760,000 in retirement wealth. A decade of different decisions created a gap that a decade of correction could not close. The math is that unforgiving.
The first and most consequential decision involves housing. Your 40s often bring a powerful urge to upgrade your living situation. The kids are bigger and need more space. You've earned success and want a home that reflects it. The mortgage feels manageable on your current income. This housing upgrade decision might be the single most consequential financial choice you make in your entire life. The family that upgrades from a $350,000 home to a $600,000 home increases their monthly housing cost by roughly $1,500 to $2,000. That's $18,000 to $24,000 annually that cannot be invested over the 25 years from age 40 to 65. That annual difference compounds to somewhere between $900,000 and $1.3 million in retirement wealth. The house upgrade literally costs $1 million in retirement money. Most people making this decision think they're spending an extra $1,800 per month on housing. They're actually spending over $1 million in retirement wealth. Those are not the same decision.
The family that stays in the modest home and invests the difference creates options the upgrading family never has. They can retire earlier. They can work part-time rather than full-time in their 60s. They can help their children buy homes. They can weather financial emergencies without catastrophe. I'm not suggesting nobody should ever buy a larger home. I'm suggesting that most people make this decision without understanding its true cost. The math isn't hidden, it's just never shown to them at the moment they're deciding. The housing upgrade feels like a quality of life improvement, and for 18 months, it is. Then it becomes normal. The excitement fades, but the financial constraint it created is permanent, lasting every day of the retirement that follows.
The second major decision involves vehicles. Your 40s often bring more expensive car purchases. The practical sedan gets replaced by a luxury vehicle. The reliable SUV gets traded for something prestigious. The family running two $45,000 vehicles instead of two $28,000 vehicles has approximately $34,000 more in auto debt, pays higher insurance premiums, and faces more expensive repairs. Over time, this vehicle premium costs somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000 in retirement wealth, depending on how frequently vehicles are replaced. This isn't a massive, dramatic decision. It happens gradually, one reasonable-seeming trade-in at a time. Each individual upgrade feels justified. The cumulative cost is enormous and almost never calculated at the moment of purchase. The third critical decision involves children's education. Your 40s typically include the most expensive child-rearing years. Teenagers need cars, insurance, activities, and eventually college. Some families take on Parent Plus loans exceeding $100,000 to send children to prestigious universities. Others cash out retirement accounts to fund education costs. This is the most emotionally charged financial decision of the decade because it involves your children. Nobody wants to be the parent who didn't give their kids every opportunity. But here is the financial reality. Your child enters their career at 22 with 40-plus years of peak earning potential ahead of them. They have a full professional lifetime to recover from a modest college start. You enter your 50s with perhaps 15 years until retirement. If you deplete your savings for their education, you have no equivalent recovery window. The airline oxygen mask rule applies here. You cannot help your children from a position of financial collapse. A parent who retires financially secure can help adult children through difficult years, co-sign loans, contribute to grandchildren's education, and provide emergency support. A parent who sacrificed retirement savings for college costs can provide none of those things.
There are better paths. A 529 plan started when children are young, grows tax-free toward education costs without touching retirement savings. Community college for 2 years, followed by a state university, produces the same degree at a fraction of the cost. A student working part-time and taking on modest loans they repay over their peak earning years is far less damaging to the family's long-term financial position than parents depleting retirement accounts. The key insight is this: student loans exist. Retirement loans do not. Your child can borrow for college and repay it over 40 years of earning. You cannot borrow for retirement. These are fundamentally asymmetric situations, and they call for asymmetric responses. The fourth and subtlest decision is lifestyle creep, the gradual, almost invisible expansion of spending that accompanies rising income. In your 40s, income tends to rise, and spending tends to rise to match it or exceed it. The restaurant budget quietly doubles. The vacation upgrades from domestic to international. The clothing budget shifts toward premium brands. The subscriptions multiply. The home services expand. None of these individual changes feel significant. Each one feels earned and reasonable, but collectively they consume the income growth that was supposed to create compounding wealth. The family earning $130,000 in their 40s but spending $125,000 is in a worse financial position than the family earning $90,000 in their 30s but investing $18,000 annually. Income is not wealth. The gap between income and spending is wealth. Lifestyle creep closes that gap silently, year by year, until people in their late 40s wonder where a decade of rising income actually went.
The entire financial outcome of your 40s can be summarized in one concept. The gap between your income and your spending is the only number that matters. A high income with high spending builds no wealth. A moderate income with disciplined spending builds substantial wealth. The gap, not the income level, not the investment strategy, not the tax optimization. The gap is what determines the trajectory. Every decision in your 40s either widens that gap or narrows it. The house upgrade narrows it. The vehicle premium narrows it. The education sacrifice narrows it. Lifestyle creep narrows it. And a narrowed gap in your 40s, given the compounding math we walked through, produces an outcome that cannot be reversed in the decade that follows.
The fifth major decision doesn't involve spending at all. It involves income. Specifically, whether you accept a career plateau in your 40s or push aggressively against it. Many professionals reach a comfortable level in their 40s and stop actively managing their career trajectory. The job is fine, the salary is decent, the work is familiar. Pushing for more feels risky or exhausting. But the income trajectory you establish in your early 40s largely determines your peak earning years. A professional who negotiates aggressively, changes employers strategically, or develops high-value skills in their early 40s often earns 30 to 50% more by their early 50s than the colleague who remained comfortable. That income difference, invested consistently, compounds into the difference between financial freedom and financial anxiety at retirement. Your 40s are the last decade when career trajectory changes produce meaningful retirement impact. A career move at 44 that increases income by $40,000 annually gives that increment 21 years to compound. The same move at 54 gives it 11 years. The leverage is dramatically different.
The sixth decision is investment paralysis, the tendency to leave money in low-yield savings accounts rather than invested in the market, often due to fear, complexity, or procrastination. $50,000 sitting in a savings account for 10 years at current rates produces roughly $58,000. The same $50,000 in a broad market index fund for 10 years at historical 8% average returns produces roughly $107,000. Investment paralysis cost $49,000 on a single $50,000 sum over a single decade. The most common reasons people stay uninvested in their 40s are fear of market timing, they're waiting for the right moment to invest, decision complexity, and simple procrastination. None of these concerns justify the cost. Time in the market consistently outperforms attempts to time the market.
A simple 3-fund portfolio or target date fund requires essentially no ongoing management, and procrastination is the most expensive habit in personal finance.
Research consistently shows that missing even a small number of the market's best days produces catastrophic results. An investor who missed just the 10 best trading days in a 20-year period ended up with roughly half the wealth of someone who stayed fully invested the entire time. The irony is that the best market days frequently cluster around the worst market days, which means investors who pull out during scary periods miss the recoveries that follow. The optimal strategy is simpler than most people believe. Invest consistently, regardless of market conditions, use broad, low-cost index funds, rebalance annually, do not try to time the market. This strategy beats the vast majority of active approaches over any 20-year period, and it requires approximately 1 hour of attention per year. In your 40s, the compounding clock is running. Paralysis is the enemy. Most retirement research converges on 15% of gross income as the minimum contribution floor that produces adequate retirement savings when started by your early 40s. This includes employer matching contributions. If you're behind on retirement savings entering your 40s, say you have significantly less than your annual salary saved, 15% is likely insufficient. In that case, 20 to 25% is the target needed to close the gap before retirement. The mechanics matter. Contribute enough to your 401k to capture the full employer match first. That's an immediate 50 to 100% return on those dollars. Then maximize HSA contributions if eligible, triple tax advantage. Then Roth IRA if income qualifies. Then additional 401k contributions up to the annual limit. Then taxable brokerage. The order matters for tax efficiency. The percentage matters for outcome.
Let me tell you specifically what the first brother actually did in his 40s. These are not heroic decisions. They are not exotic strategies. They are ordinary choices made consistently. He stayed in his modest house at 41 when the urge to upgrade was strong. That decision alone was worth over $1 million in retirement wealth. He drove practical vehicles and resisted the pressure to upgrade. He funded 529 plans for his children's education rather than stopping retirement contributions. He maintained an 18% savings rate through his entire 40s, without exception. He changed employers at 44 when his salary had stagnated, increasing his income by $38,000 annually. And he invested consistently in index funds without pausing when markets became frightening. None of these decisions are complicated. None of them required financial expertise. They required understanding the stakes and making different choices than the culture around him was making.
And here is what the second brother did. He upgraded to a $600,000 home at 41 because the family had outgrown the old place and the mortgage was affordable on his salary. He leased 2 premium vehicles because he had earned them. He took on $95,000 in Parent Plus loans so both his children could attend their first choice universities without compromise. His savings rate dropped to 4% during his 40s because the expenses were genuinely high and the budget was genuinely tight. He stayed at the same company for 15 years because the benefits were good and the job was comfortable. And he paused his investment contributions during the 2022 market downturn because the news was frightening and it felt prudent to wait, and he missed most of the recovery. Every single one of these decisions was normal. Every single one was what most people around him were doing. And every single one was expensive in ways that didn't become visible until his early 60s, when the trajectory was irreversible. The hardest part of making the right financial decisions in your 40s is that the wrong decisions are what everyone around you is doing. Your neighbors upgraded their homes. Your colleagues are leasing premium vehicles. Your social circle is taking expensive vacations. Your children's friends are attending prestigious universities. The cultural current in your 40s pushes strongly toward visible success. The home upgrade, the vehicle upgrade, the expensive college, these are the markers of having arrived, and nobody is calculating the retirement cost of these markers at the moment they're acquired. Going against that current requires understanding something most people never have explained to them. The financial decisions that produce comfortable retirements are almost entirely invisible at the time they're made. Nobody notices that you kept the modest house. Nobody posts about the practical vehicles. The disciplined savings rate is invisible.
But the outcome at 65 is not invisible. It is the sum total of 20 years of those invisible choices.
If you are currently in your 40s, here is exactly where to start. First, calculate your actual savings rate right now. Not what you think it is, what it actually is. Total retirement and investment contributions divided by gross income. If it's below 15%, that's the immediate priority. Second, if you're considering any housing upgrade, run the true retirement cost before deciding. Take the monthly difference and compound it for 25 years at 8%. That number is what the upgrade actually costs. Third, evaluate your vehicle spending as a percentage of your gross income. Most financial experts recommend keeping total vehicle costs below 15% of gross income. Many families in their 40s are running 20 to 25%. Fourth, audit your lifestyle spending against where you were 3 years ago. If your income grew 20%, but your savings rate didn't grow proportionally, lifestyle creep has captured the difference. Fifth, honestly evaluate your career trajectory. When did your income last grow significantly? If it's been more than 3 years, that's a signal worth investigating.
If you are in your 50s and behind where you'd like to be, the situation is not hopeless, but it requires different strategies than the 40s playbook. The IRS allows catch-up contributions of an additional $7,500 per year in 401k plans once you're over 50. Use them. If you own a home with significant equity, downsizing may be the highest return financial move available. The freed equity invested for 15 years can produce more retirement wealth than any other single action. Each additional year you work is worth roughly $80,000 to $120,000 in retirement wealth when you account for both the year of additional savings and the year of avoided retirement withdrawals. Working until 67 instead of 62 has a profound impact on retirement security. And Social Security timing optimization, which we covered in detail in episode 6, becomes especially important when other savings are insufficient. Each year you delay Social Security beyond full retirement age adds 8% to your benefit permanently. That's guaranteed return that no market investment can match.
If you are in your 30s watching this, you have a rare advantage. You can see the fork in the road before you reach it. The most important thing you can do in your 30s to protect your 40s is to establish the savings rate habit before your income peaks. A family accustomed to saving 15% on a $75,000 income will find it much easier to maintain on a $110,000 income. A family that has expanded spending to match every income increase will find it nearly impossible to cut back in their 40s when social pressure is at its peak. Avoid locking in housing costs that assume your income will continue rising. Buy the home your current income can comfortably support, not the one your projected future income might support. And start 529 plans for children now, even with small amounts. The compounding time available when children are young makes even modest contributions meaningful.
There is one net worth milestone that tells you more about your retirement trajectory than any other number. By age 45, most financial planners target 3 to 4 times your annual salary in retirement savings. On a $90,000 income, that means $270,000 to $360,000 in retirement accounts by 45. Not total net worth including home equity, retirement accounts specifically. If you are at or above this target at 45, you are on a trajectory toward retirement security. Consistent 15% contributions from this point will likely produce sufficient retirement wealth. If you are below this target, say $100,000 in retirement savings at 45 on a $90,000 income, the situation calls for urgent adjustment. Not panic, but genuine priority shift. The compounding math means that closing this gap requires deliberate action now rather than assumptions that things will work out. Knowing where you stand against this milestone is the single most useful piece of financial information you can have in your 40s.
Let's go back to the two brothers. The first brother didn't outperform his sibling because he was smarter. He didn't have better opportunities or higher income or more fortunate investments. He made 6 ordinary decisions differently during 1 decade.
He kept his house, he drove modest vehicles, he funded his children's education through 529 plans rather than debt. He maintained his savings rate when the culture around him was reducing theirs. He pushed his career forward when comfort suggested he didn't need to. And he stayed invested when markets made staying invested feel frightening. The second brother made equally ordinary decisions, just different ones. He upgraded his home, he upgraded his vehicles, he took on education debt to give his children the college experiences they wanted. He let his savings rate drift when expenses were high, he stayed comfortable at work, and he paused investing when markets fell. Neither brother was making dramatic choices. Both brothers were making the choices that seemed reasonable in the moment. The divergence was invisible until it was irreversible.
One important note, none of this is financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. Your situation is specific to you, and the numbers I've used are illustrative examples based on historical averages that don't predict future returns. What this video is designed to do is make sure you understand the stakes of the decisions in front of you, or the decisions already behind you, so you can approach them with full information. If this reframed how you're thinking about your 40s, hit the like button and subscribe. Every week I break down the wealth and retirement math that most people encounter too late. And if you want to understand exactly how Social Security fits into this retirement picture, including the math your advisor isn't running for you, that's episode 6. The link is right there. I'll see you in it.